A very good afternoon to everybody here. Welcome. Really nice to interact with all of you. I'm Ajay, one of the founding team members here at Cryo. I have about 18 years of experience in the software industry, mostly in software development roles. I have a master's in electrical engineering from University of Southern California in the US, right? And then I've also had some startup experience. Two startups that I was working at in the US. They were both acquired by larger companies. First one was acquired by Cisco. The second home automation startup called Nest that I was working at was acquired by Google. Been there for almost 12 years in the US, right? So returned to India in 2018 and got together with my friend Sridhar Ratana to start, join as a founding team member of Cryo. Okay, so that's a little bit about my journey. And I'm really excited to welcome today amidst us Mridula. Mridula, are you here?
Hey, Ajay.
All right, so we'll just wait for your video to come up. Okay, so there she is. Start of the day. So Mridula, really nice to welcome you. So I'll give a brief introduction to Mridula for the benefit of all the audience here today. So Mridula is an early Cryo employee. Okay, so she has the distinction of being employee number 1 at Cryo. So super exciting. Spent about 4 years with Cryo, has helped build a lot of the platform tech at Cryo, and also has contributed immensely to our data structures and algorithms and a lot of the other curriculum that we have created and developed as well. Computer science engineer at heart, loves programming, also a very fun person, as you will realize today. So Mridula, a warm welcome to you.
Thanks a lot, Ajay. So excited to be here.
Excited to be here. So Mridula, let's start by why don't you tell everybody as you begin, where are you right now? What are you doing professionally? Which country are you in? Let's start with that. Yeah. And also a brief introduction to yourself.
I mean, I think you actually covered the Cryo part, but yeah, I can cover that as well. So at the moment, I'm in London. So I work for Facebook, or now it's called as Meta. So I'm a software engineer. Just to give a little more info, so I was previously part of the WhatsApp team. So I was working in the integrity division of WhatsApp, such that if any of your account gets compromised or hacked, then their ticket used to come to our team. So right now I am part of a product called Workplace. So it's like an internal Facebook for enterprise applications. So we don't use emails to communicate. We have our internal Facebook where we see the feed. We use like something called Work Chat, which is very similar to Messenger. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. Mm-hmm. Just to give a brief journey, before this, I was part of Cryo for 4 years. So excited to be back there. So this is like homecoming. So yeah.
All right. That's fantastic. So Mridula, I want to take a few minutes to also introduce the audience today. Okay. Yeah. So we have many aspiring software developers and many people with some experience in the software development domain as well. They have very high ambitions. They want to follow in your footsteps, some of them at least, right? Basically understanding the whole space about getting jobs abroad. We've heard about the huge demand for software engineering talent in different countries. We've also heard of many Indians who have gone to those countries, started working in some of these companies and have really made meaningful differences. They've grown in their careers. And that is what everyone here is interested in learning more about, okay? Through, of course, your experience today. So that's what we'll focus on. So that's a little bit about the audience today. Some students as well, graduating soon, considering going abroad right after they graduate. But then there are plenty of people who are currently working and want to make that transition, go abroad, get some really good experience, experience life in a different country, and so many other good things that come with it. Okay, so that's a little bit about the introduction to our audience today. Okay, all right. So folks, if you have any questions, specific questions that you want me to ask Mridula, please leave it in the chat. We'll be sure to get all your questions answered. But for now, I think let's begin. Okay. So Mridula, we'll start sort of a little bit in the reverse chronological order. Okay. So we'll talk about how did you think about going abroad, opportunities abroad? When did those ideas come first? And why London? How did Facebook come into the picture? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I'll start with why abroad first. And then, so when I was looking for a switch, because I've been in cryo for quite some time, I think around 4.5 years closely at that point. So I was like, I was going to switch. So at that point, I had an option to switch between other companies, product companies, which is there in India, mainly Bangalore, or go abroad. But somehow I was very set on going abroad. So I had my professional and personal reasons for that. So professional reasons was because I thought that I'll be able to work with people from very diverse cultures when I actually go. And also because I have seen one end of the spectrum of working in a very early stage startup, I wanted to see how it is to work in a very established company as well. So I wanted to do it on the other side. And when I was exploring that part, and if I go about personally, so I was like, okay, these many years I've lived in a country. So now I want to go explore. Though we talk about being independent, I feel like the true definition of struggles and thing comes up when you actually live abroad, because you are actually independent and you have to do everything. I've heard so much from you and people like other folks who have come back, but I didn't know it unless I moved outside the country. So it's like you can redefine yourself, and you're always under constant influences of the society, your family, and everybody. So when you move out, you get a whole picture for yourself. So that was a personal reason. And I think now is the right time, like whoever is just graduating or working. So because later down the line, you'll have a lot of responsibilities. Now you have the flexibility to move to any country you want. So that was one of the main reason. So why did I choose Europe was, see, it actually depends upon what you would prefer personally. So for me, I wanted to get into a space where, so for me, traveling was very important. So if being in London is very close to traveling to the rest of the Europe, so that makes it easier. And then another thing was, for me, work-life balance was also important. So Europe has this specific culture that every day after 5 or 6, you can never see anybody returning any emails or work. And also weekends is strictly off the limit. Weekends is properly for your activities or things like that. So that work-life balance was something I thought would be right. And also third thing, I was looking from a long-term perspective. So while moving abroad, there are two things. Either you like to earn more in the meantime and come back, or maybe you're looking forward to have your roots there and then make a community and stuff like that. So in that way, Europe is closer to India. You have a strong Indian community, and also ILR is, let's say, close to 5 years. So it all fit the criteria, and then I chose this. So we're asking about Facebook specifically.
Okay, before we go to Facebook, we'll pause there. I think there's a lot to digest there, and then we'll come to Facebook. Let me summarize a few things, okay, just in case the audience kind of blew past a lot of information. First is, of course, getting that experience, living abroad, different culture, different people, different ideas, especially in a professional setting. I think it's very rewarding to learn how other people think, the kind of ideas they bring to the table as they build products. And I think when you're building products for the world, it's good to have members in your team coming from different parts of the world as well, right? So definitely different parts of the world, people in communities from different part of the world are represented in the teams you're working with. Makes it easier to build global scale products. The second thing you talked about is independence and figuring yourself out, travel, culture, building a community, some of those things. A third one, which is interesting, is the ability to do it when you're young, when you don't have too many responsibilities, where you can take that chance, go abroad and try to build something up for yourself from scratch, a career, personal life, and all those things. Which is amazing. And you talked about Europe. So let's talk more about Europe. So what kind of research did you do? Who did you talk to? And how were you convinced about Europe? And of course, you talked about the work-life balance. Um, but how did you go about researching Europe? How did you figure out what kind of opportunities professionally,
Mm.
things like that?
Yeah. So before I totally focus on Europe, I first shortlisted 2 to 3 countries. So, and I think most of them have to do that, because if you only try for a particular country, it's very hard to get
Mhm.
a job. So I actually had Australia, Europe, so a couple of options like that. But then I analyzed the tech industries, because I'm from a very tech background. And then I had my preferences, right? I was at Cryo, so that means it's a product company. So I want somewhere where it's very product focused. So in that case, when compared to Australia, Europe had better opportunities. So I started reading some articles, spoke to people who are settled there, like who
Mhm.
have been in Australia for quite some time, who have a PR, and then who are in Europe for quite some time, how it is. And then I also understood like what are the companies which I would like to work for and where are their headquarters. So
Right.
when it came to Europe as well, I could say that there are multiple companies like countries like Spain, other places as well. But then when I saw United Kingdom, London, I was like, most of the companies are headquartered here. So that means it'll be a better exposure tomorrow if I want to make a transition as well. And also, I knew that this was the finance capital. So that means the money is going to be thriving there. So that was a couple of reasons. So I would say definitely reading about it, talking to people made me come to the decision.
Right. I think that's some very good points there. One of the fact that there are many companies who have a significant presence in London makes it easier, like mobility wise, it improves a lot of options for you. You're in Facebook, but tomorrow, if you have to move to Google or Stripe or any other country, definitely accessible in the region without having to relocate again and
Yeah.
start from scratch again in a different city. So having that set of options and large number of companies, definitely a plus. Um, um, did you talk to people who are already working there in London, different companies in London, or any specific companies?
So I actually spoke to people who are working at Facebook in London.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, so when I was interviewing, when it came to London, I had one to like couple of opportunities, but then I was a bit interested in Facebook. So I also, so basically what I used to do is just to add another answer to the previous question. So I also chose Europe because the hiring was good there at that point. So you need to also think about how is the country with the visa? Are they hiring more people? Is it going under recession and all that as well? Just to add one more point to that.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. So coming back to a current question, so I actually connected with people in LinkedIn a lot. People
Mhm.
are really busy, but then if you craft your messages in such a way and then find common connections and then message to them specifically what you're looking for, you know what, this is my background, this is what I'm looking for, this is the answer, this is what the question, they would definitely answer. So I actually sent messages to so many people so that I would get at least few responses. So that is something I did. And then I communicated, connected, and then through friends and the people who know who will be working there, and then spoke to them how it is to actually work here, what is the culture, how is the work. And I also spoke to, I think, one or two who worked in other startups as well who are here. So networking is really important to understand about it.
All right. What would your advice be for someone who might not know anyone directly
Mhm.
in these places? Now, London is an example that you're very familiar with. But if you did not know anybody in London, how would someone go about, finding people to talk to? Are there some groups or some communities where you can go and discover such people? Uh,
Mhm.
any other suggestions that you have?
Okay, so I think for people who actually do not know more in London, so first I would say start with articles like Medium articles. So though you might feel you might have a very specific questions, most of them have the same questions. So people would have answered about it, and then you can look at YouTube videos as well.
Mhm.
And also I would say look at LinkedIn comment connections and start trying to connect. So you'll start getting answers to that as well. So there
Sure.
are specific WhatsApp groups and stuff, but then you only get access to that after you move. and then make the transition. So at least at the starting point wise, if you do your particular research and have an idea, then in that case, you will be able to, have a little picture before you connect to people on LinkedIn or the other resources, I would say.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's good. So once you have found somebody to talk to, like what kind of questions did you basically ask? And different people have different opinions and different experiences. So they're giving you advice based on what they have experienced and stuff, right? How do you figure out whether some advice is relevant to you or what you're looking for versus how do you basically sift out the good advice, relevant advice from the potentially advice?
Yeah. So I think in that perspective, so first thing is to know what you want. So the main thing is when you're going to talk to so many people throughout the journey, you're going to have a lot of conclusions, intermediate conclusions. So where you would talk to somebody and you feel like, oh, this is right. And you would talk to somebody else and you might feel like the other thing is right. So first to understand what you want out of this journey and then maybe jot it down should be very, very helpful. And then when you start talking to that is also a tricky part. It's about sometimes you should be in such a way that what this is a relevant advice, you'll take it. And then sometimes no matter what advice is given to you, you should not take it because it'll be totally against what you want. It'll be totally in the extreme of it. But then if you always be in a way that you're right, then you will end up falling as well. I do not have a clear answer for that. It is through experience only, because even after I moved in, there have been times where I've been on both the ends of the extreme. But then it's more about you knowing what you want, so that you know that this advice line aligns with your fundamentals and your goals. So you will go ahead with it. And when it doesn't, you just wouldn't.
Got it. All right. So did you evaluate other companies also in London in addition to Facebook?
Yes. Yeah.
How did you go about applying to these companies? Did you get referrals from people, or did you apply directly to those companies? How did it work?
Okay. So I actually thought to apply for these companies 2 years back, since I actually joined itself. So at that point when I applied, I did not get accepted anywhere. So because I was not from any, I was from a Tier 3 college, so I didn't have the credibility. But then Cryo's work experience really boosted my resume. So that I was actually from an early stage startup, gave a credibility on my own. And then when I started applying on career pages, so basically I used the career pages to apply. And then I actually used LinkedIn to apply as well. And then I tailored my resume in such a way that, like you can actually talk to Cryo as well. We used to get our resumes vetted and make sure it's in a particular format. So that also helped. And then once I started applying, obviously you wouldn't get a call back immediately, right? So you would start from a large top of funnel. And also it's about periods. So one main thing about searching a job abroad is it's going to take a lot of time. It would easily take around 3 to 6 months just for the interview process. So you would apply for a couple of months and then you'd keep applying for different roles, expecting a role back. So even for a particular company I would try, let's say, software engineer, enterprise engineer, partnership. So you would try different roles for you to get that heads up. And then when it comes to multiple companies as well, so I actually started somehow for my resume, FANGs were something easy in a way that I heard back from all the FANGs, but then startups. When there is a mid-size companies, I never hear back. And that is the case for me even till today. Okay. So it's like either startups or FANGs. Mid-size companies, my resume gets rejected even when I apply till now. I do not know why. So I think based on your resume, it will be very specific to what companies want. So you will figure out the niche as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So you have to keep applying to different roles, keep trying. Does it count as a negative or something? If you have applied too many times, all that doesn't matter. Just keep applying and wait for a call. Any particular tips for how you tailored your application, your basically job application? Did you write an SOP, or did you have to write some other email or something to make yourself better notice?
Okay. So I actually preferred going for no cover letter, no SOP, but then my resume is very short, 1 page crisp. And I think most of the users here should follow that. I know people go for long page resumes and all, like I am close to 5 years experienced and I still maintain my single page resume even now when I'm looking for a job. So that's very important. And then bullet, and then making sure that there is no unnecessary information in your resume, just following the approach of what was the task you did, what is the impact, and what was your input into it. Just following that template, and then making sure that every experience is crisp out there, because people are going to look at it just for 1 second. So that helps. And the another thing as well, when you go through job descriptions, you look for some keywords, make sure they are part of your resume as well.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Then in that case, it'll help in better resume screening, and you get your resume reviewed by multiple people. Like at least I had 4 to 5 people who are really good, who had their inputs. So because it's a process, right? It's going to take I would definitely say it takes around 2 weeks to get to the right resume. Even after that, you'll have multiple iterations after that. So, yeah. But then once you put that effort, it can be used for a couple of years. So that should be good.
Nice. That's good. Yeah, I definitely support that 1 page resume guideline. It's too hard, especially the popular companies where you get thousands of resumes using software to filter out resumes. And when the hiring manager or even the HR person, the talent acquisition person is reviewing your resume, they really don't have the time. They spend probably 20 seconds on your resume. So 1 page, definitely the way to go. I would highly recommend that as well. Okay. How did you prepare for these interviews? What was your preparation like? Talk to me about that.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, it took me a lot of time, and compared to, I think these users would be way ahead because they're already in cryo program. They'll be prepping. Because I was working for a couple of years, I was out of touch with the interviewing. So I think for me, it took around 4 months, the whole DSA preparation. So again, when you're going to look for jobs, especially in Europe, let's say, you're going to have 2 to 3 different types of interviews and companies. So one is going to be where they're going to give you take homes, project oriented. That's how their interview process is going to be. And the other is going to be banks, where it's going to be completely theory oriented. And the third is going to be companies like Meta, where it's going to be coding and system design only. So you'll have 3 different types of interviews. And I would say we can't master everything, so we have to play to our strengths. I know a couple of my friends and colleagues who are very good at take homes, so they would go for that type of companies. But I think when you're preparing from cryo, you would be equipped for take homes. You have some interview prep packs so that you'll be able to answer Java questions as well. And then the last thing is coding and system design. But for me, I shortlisted in such a way that I'm not going to go for take home assignments. And banks also weren't a big of an option at that particular point. So I totally focused on coding, system design, and everything. So at that was the time when we had the Cryos DSA curriculum. So we had a particular template to follow. Let's say this is sliding pointer, this is trees. And if you know a particular template, we can solve around 10 to 12 questions. So I was totally into that as well. And then I was heavily practicing some of the popular company questions, lead code questions as well. And then we have some famous packs like 200 questions or 35 questions, which we'll do. And then we'll do company specific. So I would say it's more the practice, and it'll definitely test your patience, because it'll take a lot of time. You will see good growth, and then after that it'll be a straight line where you'll get so frustrated. There are so many times I wanted to give up in that preparation process, and I think that's the case even when I go back to doing DSA today. That's the nature of it. So yeah, that is one thing I prepared. And then for system design as well, when you're in the early stages of your career, they're not going to ask you too much experience about system design. Just some basic understanding of architecture should do. So yeah.
Got it. Cool. So important takeaway, at least that I see, is regardless of how many years of experience you have, I think DSA is still very relevant. At least how many rounds was it? One round of DSA followed by system design and other things that you would discuss. And even within DSA, like what was the nature of? I mean, do they go super deep into things like dynamic programming and things like that, or is it more deeper questions, optimization problems within well-known data structures and simple stuff?
Just to give a little more background on that, when I was interviewing, I realized every company has their own sweet spot, and their coding and style is going to be really different. Just from my understanding, I'll tell you from the companies I interviewed, Microsoft had low-level system design, high-level system design, and then when it comes to coding, they are very fond of string questions. And then when it comes to Google, they are more about solving less number of questions, but then they want to know more about your thinking process. When it comes to Meta, it's all about speed and verification. They want clean code, but then completely tested. So
Right.
I understood all this just by interviewing at multiple places. You can also talk to people and read about it to understand. Just to give you an overview of the whole process. So first you'll give your resume. If that goes through, then we will have, when it comes to these FANGs I'm talking about, when there are startups, you'll have hiring managers round, then technical rounds, and then the other rounds. So startups have a little, I would say sometimes I would feel startups are more strenuous when compared to these big companies. But I would talk about Facebook. So after you have the resume, you have a phone screen round where you will be given 2 DSA questions and you have to solve it in 45 minutes. And after the phone screen, then you'll have another 4 rounds for onsite. So you will give 2 coding. So at least Meta is going to be heavily coding oriented. So you're having 3 coding rounds. If you think about the rounds, what you have, and then you have 1 system design, 1 behavioral. So this is the total number of rounds. So if you see totally, you have around 5 rounds, excluding the resume and the technique and the HR discussion.
Got it. And the system design, to what level of depth? Is it mostly low-level system design, or they focus on high-level system design? What were your experiences based on all the interviews you gave?
So most of the companies go for high-level system design, and except I think Microsoft had a thing to go for low-level system design. But then if you're going to, again, if you're going for, let's say, something like a product role, then they would go more for little bit of concentration on API and things like that. And then if you're going for, let's say, a system role, a normal software engineer, let's infrastructure or architecture or integrity, rules like that, then it's normal high level. But then even I would say if you're not that experienced and they're not going to dive deep into it, when it comes to system design, you shouldn't throw out words which you do not know. That's the main thing. You would have just heard load balancer somewhere and then you'd be like, load balance. Okay, they'll ask 4 questions into that. They'll know if you're just saying something or you actually know about it. Right. So the main thing is before you use it, make sure you know about it, else just don't use it. And just clearly say, I'm not very familiar with it. I know it might give a negative response, but then it's just better than saying that you know, and then you're not able to withhold that.
Right. Yeah, I think the takeaway is whatever you know really, really well. Depth is far more important. Depth of your understanding is far more important than breadth. Knowing broadly is useful, but depth is what gets the job done. Right. That's probably how I would summarize that. So what about the, okay, we talked about DSA, we talked about system design. For the companies that focus a little bit on low-level system design, what is the area of focus generally? Do they give you any, is it take-homes or is it just in-person interviews or online interviews where they ask you specific questions of entity modeling, things like that?
Yeah, so it's actually mostly online interviews where they ask specific questions of entity modeling. How are you modeling the classes, the fields, and coming up with the function definitions and things like that. But because I actually went for mid-level role, I do not have a lot of low level at all. So let's say it depends on, so there are cadres, right? Entry level, mid level, and then senior. I'm still in mid level. So if we are actually at the entry level, then you're expected to, I would expect that you would actually give a lot of low level system designs. If you're going to mid level, it would be high level system design, but then not very deep into it. When you're going to go for senior roles, then you have to be very strong in the system designs, high level architecture you're going for.
All right, got it. For the low level system design, did you also have to write any code?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. It's not just about creating the designs, it's also basically writing a little bit of the code at least. Sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good. That's interesting. Cool. So HR management rounds, how did they go? What do they typically focus on? Touch upon that briefly.
Yeah. So behavioral rounds, I know many of us take it very lightly, thinking it's just a behavioral round and it'll be okay. But I would say I know my friends as well who have struggled in behavioral rounds, and you have to prepare yourself. So when you're going to go for behavioral rounds, first there's going to be like the set of common questions, which is going to be common across multiple companies, just like what is the interesting project you have worked on? How would you have handled a conflict with your colleague? So
Right.
things like that. So some common questions have some, you don't need to have a defined answer, but at least have an answer about this is the project I'm going to talk about, this is the conflict situation. You wouldn't want to sit in the interview and then think about a situation and talk about it, and
Right.
also frame it in such a way that in behavioral round it's going to be more about your impact than the team impact. So most of the time it'd be like, my team did this, our colleagues did this. It's going to be about what you did. And the third thing is, be specific about when you're going for a company. So whenever it's going to be specific company, read about their values. So like every company will have their own values, like Cryo had its values and Meta has like move fast. So every company's had their own values, so make sure that you tailor your answers and responses to that. Like if it's say they're going to talk about building independently, make sure there is an answer which says that you're an independent player
Got it.
or collaborative, so things like that.
So these are the kind of questions and that they're asking. How did you go about preparing for these? I mean, every company is different, and sometimes it can get a little overwhelming trying to prepare. I'm not talking only about the management rounds and HR rounds. Even the DSA rounds or the system design rounds, right? How do you make sure you've kind of covered most of what most of the companies will ask?
Got
Uh,
it.
yeah.
Honestly, I would say that that part is still of a struggle even now. When I'm if I want to re-interview at this point, I would be like, so many companies have so many different types of interviewing and then options, so it's hard for me to prepare on all the fronts. So the first thing is deciding what you want and what is your strengths, so play to your strengths. So as I have worked in Cryo a lot, I'm a product engineer. So when I go for a role, I'm more of a product engineer, so that is what I'll concentrate on. So right away a lot of other roles get filtered. And then when it comes to companies as well, I said, right, take home is not my forte. So if somebody's asking me take home, I would be like, okay, I'm letting go of this. So you would feel that you're letting go of a lot of opportunities, but then play to your strengths. So even now, I would like to focus more on the companies which would ask DSA and system design, and then little bit of company which is theory oriented, then the ones which is going to be about take homes, or it's extremely theory oriented at this point because that is not the line I could prepare on. So you try to group, you come up with a set of companies which have a similar structure, and then you can prepare for it accordingly. I know people who still do not like to go for DSA system design and then keep the lead code minimum, but then go for more about, they like companies which are asking questions from their experience, and Europe and UK is known for that. So
Okay.
they target that kind of companies as well. So
Got
yeah.
it. Got it. That's good. So how many companies did you interview with before landing the opportunity at Meta?
Mm.
Roughly,
Yeah,
10,
I think around
100, 50,
10 to 12 when
10
I
to
was
12.
interviewing. We're not going to talk about all the resume applications I did and rejected. That I did not have the account of how many companies that happened. But then
Yeah.
when I was interviewing, I think I did it in two batches.
Uh-huh.
So I would always usually start around 5 to 6. That's my style even till now. So I
Mhm.
would always start with interviewing around 5 companies at a particular point, and then I would finish that pipeline, and then I would reapply for a couple of companies. So what I would do is I will first apply, I'll start studying, I'll generate some of the leads and make sure I have companies lined up. When companies lined up, I'll go for an interview mode. Obviously, you will blow up a lot of things, you'll have a lot of experience, and then I'll repeat this for round two. So for me, it has always worked at round two. And
Mhm.
every time when I do it, let's say when I have 5 companies, I'll have my own favorite for 2 companies, and
Right.
then something else which is an easy target, and then two things which is so light that is okay. It's not my, I would be happy to let go as well. So that
Okay.
is the case for me even today. When I'm interviewing 5, and then 2 would be my main, and then the other 3 would be like, okay, backup options.
Okay. That's good. Do companies based in other countries, I mean, is it a problem getting shortlisted if you're applying as an international applicant from a different country? Is there, I mean, how do you discover companies that are okay with people from India applying to those
Yeah.
jobs?
So I would say it's not going to be specific about India. For them, you are an international candidate, but then you have to look if the companies are okay with visa sponsoring. You'd be very, very surprised to know there are really good and big companies, but then they don't sponsor visa. Like just one experience, my Microsoft interview went through, but then just caught in the pipeline because they said they didn't have the budget at that particular point from the team to give me a visa sponsor. So things like that would happen. And that's why I said it tests your patience, and you have to be really resilient to go through the process. Because after interviewing at 12, you'll be able to get one offer because they're going to relocate you from a different country, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's going to take a couple of months, but then if you actually try to see if this company have they sponsored visa and before and things like that would actually be very helpful.
Okay, that's good. So from, say, you do a really good interview, you get an offer. From that stage to actually, landing in the country, showing up for work, what is the timeline like? And just talk to me about that timeline.
Again, so we would think after we get a job, we'll be free, and then we'll definitely have a peace of mind, but that's not going to be the case. So you're going to start with the visa process, go through all that, and then meet your friends, family, you're going to be ready for the next big transition. And then until you land in the other country and then go for your day one, you're not sure if you have the job, right? So
that's not exactly true, right? I mean, you do have the job, but you still think,
yeah, I think it's just your fear. Suddenly
yeah,
you're going, and then you're like,
sure.
oh, what if I think this fear was there because I did all this when COVID finished, and then we had an opening after that. So it was like, when world can come to a stop suddenly on a day, then
Yeah.
so that fear was there. But I think now we are back to normal, so that is more helpful at this point.
Yeah.
So but then the whole process, I would say, after the interviewing, again, the visa process and moving, it took almost around 4 to 5 months. Again, it depends. It depends on company to company, country to country. But I would say if you want to make a transition to international transition, it'll easily take 6 to 8 months, the whole process. But having said that, you might feel like, oh, it's going to take 8 months. No, it'll go away like this as well. So
you keep busy and so much to do that 8 months seems short. But before you start it feels like, oh my God, it's 6 to 8 months. Should I come or not? Right. Okay.
It's a trade-off. Either you go for masters, you spend, and then that's going to be an amazing experience as well. You live the university life and then you go differently. Or you're in your current job, you're earning, and then you're trying about it, and then you make the transition as well. So it's also about balancing the current job when you're interviewing. So that's also going to be a little hard. And having said that, India works very fast. So your interview process are fast. You can interview on a weekends, even after work hours. But then if you're going to go for other countries, you'll have time zone issues. There are interviews I've done at 2 a.m. Because that's where you will have to match. And also the process is going to be slow because people are not going to work on weekends or after hours. So you'll have to accommodate that as well.
Do you have friends now, new friends that you've made in London potentially, who have come there to work at smaller companies, small startups? Have you had an opportunity to meet some people like that? Or maybe they came there first to work in a startup and now have moved into Meta or something like that?
No. Most of them actually come here through masters. And honestly, people who move here, let's say very few are from early stage startups because they wouldn't be sponsoring visa at that point. So you don't have to go for this large scale, but then maybe mid-sized companies or startups, let's say scale-ups, would be a better position to better thing there. But then really early stage startups, at least from London, I do not know. But then I know there are things like Germany, Berlin, and then Amsterdam. Amsterdam has early stage startups who sponsor visa a lot. So there are some startup hubs as well. So I would not definitely say London is a startup hub in a way, but then there are places like Estonia, Amsterdam, Berlin, Tel Aviv, which is in Israel, and they are all going to be like blooming startups where you will have a lot of visa opportunities.
Got it. How's life there? Now that you've been there for a year, adjusting to a new country, new workplace, different working styles, lots to learn on the job. And also managing, professionally is fine, but also personal, setting yourself up, you get a home, you get furniture. How was that adjustment? And if you could just briefly touch upon, do you have enough means to do it comfortably, in the sense that is the salary good enough in order to enable you to live a comfortable life? Touch upon some of that.
Yeah, so I would first start from the culture, and then we can talk about expenses as well of living abroad. Definitely, I wouldn't say it has been easy. It's been very difficult, but then it's also been very rewarding.
Right. Hey, I think we just lost your audio. Something unclipped or something like that, or just became very soft all of a sudden.
No, I think
This
something.
is fine. This is fine. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So as I said, it's going to be high risk, high rewarding. But then if you think back, I would say this 1 year, whatever the experience I've had, and then I've definitely changed as a person a lot in all the perspectives. It's like equal to close to, let's say, 5 to 10 years of my lifetime. So definitely that much experience you'll go through every single day. And the day is very fast. Like you'd start in the morning, and then even weekends are packed. So you would do so many things in a day. So it's like I would definitely say whatever I would have done in a week in Bangalore, you'd end up doing in 2 days or something. I think you would be able to relate because it's fast, morning, afternoon, evening, and then you'll do so many things. So that is there. And then you there is actually strong Indian community. That is also a main thing to look for when you are going abroad. See if there are about Indians there who will be able to help you. Honestly, I would say after moving here, I do not feel like I'm in a different country some many at times. I just feel I'm in the northern part of India most of the times. So that is there, but then it's actually exposed me to, I'm from South India, just to put there, so it's exposed me to different culture here. And after you come out, you just feel, Indians are Indians, so you just feel like even
Sure.
the state which is right there in Kashmir is like your next door, and
Right.
it's a good
Right.
feeling to have. So your ideologies and beliefs also change,
Mhm.
which is very good. So but then if you think about the downside, we talk about being independent, but then being independent is really hard. So you need to manage your bills, your taxes, and back in India it's hard, but then you'll have somebody for help. Like you can ask your brother to do something, or maybe your relative, somebody, or your parents. Here everything has to be taken care of on your own. The parts which is little hard, especially when you're sick,
Mhm.
here mostly you wouldn't go to doctors because people take care of themselves when they are having a fever and all. Unless you are seriously sick, you
Mhm.
have to become resilient and then take care of yourself and be good at it. That is one part which is hard. But then if you talk about really if you talk about the greener side, as I said, you will mingle with people from different cultures, so you would learn a lot about them, like food. And then you will have different, like let's say I never knew musicals existed until I came here. And then in a way, I've never been a music person, but then the number of concerts I've gone here, it's like live. That is something I would have never imagined being back home, or watching cricket matches live there, and then watching my idols who I wanted. So things
Right.
like that, right? So the number of things you would do, like going for stand-ups, you would do that back home as well, but then it'll become a part of your integrity, travel, and also you do a lot here. So
Sure.
talking about expenses, again, it's going to be about what kind of lifestyle you will have. So there are people who live a way in such a way that they actually reduce their life to a minimum. They want to save as much as they can, they want to go back home. So that is one kind of lifestyle, which is something I wouldn't encourage. And then there is another one where you wouldn't save much, but then you will save a thing, but your standard of living would be good, and then you would experience life. As I said, all these concerts, things don't come cheap.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you
Sure.
would, yeah, so you would go for that. But then if you look back, right, this age, this time, you would never get back. So you'll experience.
Mhm.
So obviously, I know that Europe is highly taxed when compared to the other places, which is true. But
Right.
then, as I said, right, your quality of life goes up
Sure.
significantly. So it's about, again, the trade-offs. You want to really earn money, go back, then you would go for something like Middle East where it's tax-free. You want a good work-life balance, you want a standard of living, you want to experience, then you'll come for Europe. And then US is a different scene. So things like that you would actually use to choose as well. But then if don't convert the salary, whatever they give abroad, directly be like, oh, they're giving 80 lakhs. That's not going to be the case. Uh, you would actually probably save more in India than what you would do abroad. But it's about, again, as I said, preferences. But
Mhm.
having said that, you would make more money abroad as well.
Sure.
Like let's say if your earning potential was about 1.5 lakh back there, you would earn about three here. But then with three here, but then as I said, your quality of life would improve. but then you would save back, let's say, the same 50,000 or 70, depends on what you do as well. So,
Got it. Got it. Right. That's interesting. That's good. It's good to see that you've really had all this experience. It reminds me of, so I left in 2006 and I went to the US, very different country, very different style, very different from Europe, actually. And all the things that you're telling me, it's bringing back a lot of memories of my own. And I'm just thinking about all those times. That's good, though. I mean, good to hear your perspective and congratulations. I think you've done really well for yourself. 1 year on, you look bright, and looking forward to a lot more opportunities there, I'm sure. So tell me about the professional front, right? Is work difficult? It's a different country. You're in Meta. From the outside, many people who have not worked at such companies might be thinking, oh my God, you're very smart people there. Work is going to be tough. Can I manage? Will I have enough skill? Or will everybody around me be so much smarter than me? Will I be able to hold myself and succeed in the role? Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think it's a cycle. You're going to go through different phases of this question every once in a while. Sometimes you feel like you're doing good, and then sometimes you feel like I'm not anything when compared to people here. I'm not able to perform at all. So you're going to go through different scenarios. So, but one thing is when you're working in big companies, when compared to for me working at Cryo was very collaborative. When we did things, it was more like our company, our things like that. But then when it goes to these companies, it's more like your task. You finish it, and then you just launch it, and then you ship it, and everybody's running towards it. So you get very little. I'm not even talking about help, but then it's more about your own goals, right? So it actually reduces the drive in a way. But then, as I said, you would be inspired by seeing smartest people around you, but you'll also be intimidated by them. They would just come and then they would work. But I would say it would give a definition of what you would want in life. Couple of years down the line, do you want to just keep doing this, or do you want to just experience it and then do a different way? So you would have a lot of existential questions as well, which is something I haven't figured out. Maybe down the line you would be able to figure it out. But then, yeah, see, the thing is, when though I have cracked the interview once, when I'm trying again, it's not easy. It's again going to be the same way. So just like that, though you're part of the company, it's going to be hard at every single point because it's going to come up with different culture. Having said that, if I come back to Cryono, will it be easy? Maybe not, because again, the work will be tough, or maybe it's interesting and challenging in a different way. So yeah, so that is also there. And the main thing about these companies is adapting to different tech stack. At least that has been the most challenging for me. I have been working on Java and Python. And then when I moved to WhatsApp, I was very, very excited because think about the product I've used day in and day out, and I'm working behind the scenes. But then the tech stack was Haxel and Erlang.
Okay.
So that was like threw me from object-oriented programming language to another end, and I never imagined. And then now back to Hack and React. So I would say pushing yourself to a different technologies, and every company would have their own framework. That learning curve is also going to be a little bit deep in compared to it. So yeah, it comes with its own struggle. But then I would say at least one important thing is that growing up, or we see a lot of Indians, or not just Indians, people that we think, you know what? And I have asked this question when I was back in Cryo to Ajay as well. You know what? You worked in Google. Why do you leave? And why would you leave something which is actually told a fantasy and stuff like that? But I would say definitely it has its own advantages and everything, but doesn't mean that you get into a fang that means you have achieved something and that's the best place to be at. That is not the case. So that is not the mindset you should come with as well, because that would result in a lot of disappointment. So yeah, that is there.
Yeah, I think in many cases it's more you've achieved a lot, you're prepared, you're joining a company fair and square, you've cleared the interview process, and the company is selecting you because they think you have the skills, necessary skills to join, learn, build features and succeed in the company. They know that you can succeed. It's about you believing that you can succeed, going there and just focusing a lot initially, at least the first 1, 2, 3 years. The learning curve will be super steep. Learn a lot. At least that's what I've seen from my experience. You're like a fish out of water initially, but then when you think about why did they give me this job, obviously they know that I can succeed and they will benefit. The company's not doing you a favor. And then you say, okay, fine, one step at a time, one feature at a time,
Yeah.
one product at a time, and suddenly you're growing really well. And in a year or two, you're the one mentoring all the other people coming in, right? So tell me, what aspects of your work experience in India, and we don't have to talk specifically about cryo or anything like that. What kind of, how did that help you? And generally, how did that translate into success in your current role, or even potentially future roles in the same company or different companies? How has that helped your Indian experience?
I think first Indians, because we're used to the hustling culture, so we hustle a lot. So that helps when you're abroad. And the second thing is, believe it or not, India is tech advanced. So when I just come here and then certain many number of things, I would be like, when it comes to service industries, India is ahead. And then in a lot of technologies, let's say our Swiggy and many things like that.
Mhm.
Um, in a way, we like to simplify things, and that's why we depend so much on tech. So that
Right.
means we're tech advanced, but that is not the case here. When people are very self-reliant, they do not they do not depend more on tech. So
Mhm.
because of the way we have grown up, we have learned things, and then we have seen things. Our tech knowledge is much better when it comes to the people who are present in the other countries or in the abroad. So that even when you're in the team, I would say definitely they are more intelligent. But then whatever is there in the tech,
Mhm.
whatever you learn from the tech space in India definitely puts you a little ahead than the rest of them in
Right.
a way. And I think that's the reason many Indians do well in software engineering as well. So yeah.
Right. Okay, that's good. Cool. So, I'll take a few audience questions. A lot of things coming. By the way, this has by far been, I think, one of our most popular talks, more than 500 people, and so many questions. I've tried to go through them, and I'll try
Okay.
to summarize a few of them. And if any of you have any specific questions, now is a good time. You can message it to me directly, because the chat is so busy. It's so hard to keep track of what everybody is asking. So one question people have about London is, if you want to if you want to lead a decent quality life, how much money should you make? What is a good starting salary in a place like London if you want to, get a flat, maybe share it with somebody, and then you want to lead a decent life, maybe go to a few concerts and save up a little bit of money. What is a good amount of money?
I think 50 to 60K should be good. And
Okay,
obviously start with sharing. So
of course.
yeah, you can share with two or three people, and then you can look for different areas to live. But I think 50 to 60K should be good when you're
Mhm.
starting point with that. And even right, when it comes to UK, you don't have to only focus on London. I know people who are in Edinburgh, Glasgow, who still like that kind of life as well. So there are different places. Manchester, there you would be able to save much more
Sure.
than at London. But it's again your personal preferences. I would prefer London any day. So yeah,
Right. Approximate monthly expenses in rent and other things, where would you put it?
I would say you would yeah, the expenses would be around, let's say, £2,000
Okay.
per
All right.
month. So yeah.
All right, great. One more question is, how much DSA practice, uh, you know, is required? What is the level of DSA questions? Um, like if you do intermediate level or advanced level on lead code, like if you could share some thoughts about that.
So I would say DSA, when you're starting to practice, start from lead code easy, but then mostly go for lead code medium. Then your
Mhm.
maximum chunk of preparation has to be lead code medium and a little bit of famous lead code hard. And even the topics, I would say stick until trees and graphs. You don't have to go too much into DB and stuff and all,
Mhm.
unless you're going to go for Amazon who love and TikTok companies like that who love DB questions. And most of the others are discouraged from the questions. So it's
Mhm.
more about, and also don't memorize solutions. When you're going to memorize 300 problems and then when there is a slight variation, you won't be able to solve it. It's
Right.
going to be about solving so many so that it comes naturally for you. And
Mm.
then I know, just going back to this, so there is this 7-step methodology which we used to follow when we were solving Cryos methodology. So believe it or not, it's going to be what you follow naturally as well. Understand the question, coming up with an example. So even now when I'm preparing back, I go back to what the methodology, what we followed. So though you might feel that for every question it takes time, do it, then it becomes naturally for you when you're solving problems as well. But yeah, I think this should be the range at which your DSA should fall upon.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you for the validation as well. And just heads up for everybody here, Mridula actually has contributed quite a bit to our DSA preparation packs, all the different questions and everything we have in the cryo DSE material. Mridula has been a collaborator and has contributed towards that effort as well. Okay, so I thought I'd just plug it in. It's a shameless plug, but what the hell? You know, you've gone through the difficult path and you've actually contributed, so why not plug that in? Um, all right. So, do you have to find a visa sponsor versus companies will take care of it on their own? Um, Thoughts about that?
Second, not sure what is.
I can hear you just fine.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm able to hear you. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So I think the question was around visa sponsorship. There are some consulting agencies that do all the stuff, all of this versus just go direct with companies, and any thoughts about that? Did you consider going through a consulting company?
I did, but then it's very expensive going through that. And also, I'm not sure about how much of that is a success. So I did not take the consultancy part. So I wouldn't be the right person to answer on that question, but I would prefer while company sponsor so that it's tied in that way. But then
Mhm.
if you're, let's say, trying for countries which has PR and stuff, maybe consultancy would help in that way.
Got it. All right. I presume IELTS is required. You have to take one of those. No, it's not
No,
required. Okay.
it's not required. If you have done your bachelorate or your master's, if your degree is in English, you just need to get a medium of certificate, your medium of instruction certificate from your college, and that should be sufficient.
Right. Just in addition to what Mridula said, when you're going through the interview process, the company will evaluate you based on your English communication skills. So especially if you're looking for positions abroad, make sure you work on your spoken English skills. It'll come in very, very handy. I think if you can't communicate with your peers, then you're not going to get the job. Okay, so definitely focus on your English skills, right? Um, all right. So your visa, is it 5 years? You can stay there 5 years with the option of extending. How does it work?
It is for 5 years, but then it's tied to the company. So that now if I want to change a company, I need to get a sponsorship again. So that is hard. Every time you want to get a sponsorship, it's hard. But this is also a reason why you target for countries where you would be able to get a PR easily, or at least in a shorter term. So let's say you go through the struggle for 4 years, 5 years, and then you're sorted. But then if you go for several countries where there's going to be long listing queues, then this is going to go for another, let's say 10, 15 years. So yeah, it's a struggle every time you want to change. But then, yeah, it is what it is.
Okay, cool. All right. Um, I think a few other questions that I'm getting. Is it better to get experience and come there directly to work versus go there for a master's and then find a company locally after you graduate, potentially internships as well?
This is something I would definitely say. Even if you're going for masters, don't go for masters as an easy way out instead of finding a job and getting an experience. Because people who do bachelors here, even then they take a year out, have work experience, and come back. So one of the major issue I've seen with people is that they come for masters without any work experience, and then once they graduate, they really struggle to find jobs. So if you want to do a masters, just like how you'd prepare, have 2 years experience at least back home and then do masters and then come here, or maybe have a couple of years experience and then move. But do not move to a different place without any experience at all, just for the sake of a course or anything. Then it's going to be really hard for you to break into the niche because you'll be competing with people who already have expertise in the field.
Right. What's the economy there like? Recession, any looming issues with respect to, okay, the economy is not good, jobs are becoming difficult, or layoff tensions and other things?
So finding a job right now is difficult, I would say everywhere. So that is something I'm not going to sugarcoat and say this is how it is. But then it's the world market. It's not very specific to this is the country market. I would say it's the world market because when I talk to a couple of my friends who are in different countries, even back home, everywhere, it is tough. But I think this will also pass through. And as much as we let's hope it passes through. And then it always does, right? When there is a low, there has to be an high, because we saw a bloom during a couple of years back, and that's why we're seeing low as well. So yeah, that is there. We'll have to beat the odds when it comes to that.
Right. You have interacted potentially. Just a few more questions, okay, Mridula, and then we can call it a day. You've interacted with peers or seniors in your company, people who've more experience than you working at Meta, who've potentially come from India. What is the career trajectory? Fine, you get into a company like Meta or any other company, right? And it doesn't matter whether you came through masters or through a master's path or you applied directly. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, generally, what is the trend like? What do people do? How do they move between companies? How do they plan their careers and career growth?
So again, there's going to be different roles. You would start as, let's say, a entry level. You would become mid-level, and then you'll become a senior. We'll say that an IC5 or something. And then after that, people usually go become, they would grow into their role. It depends. Okay. Either you're so much into engineering, you only like coding and nothing else, then you will become, let's say, after senior, you'll go in that role, let's say IC6 or things like that. There are people who would like to be architects, so they'll grow into those roles. Or people who would like to be managers. So after IC5, they'll grow into managerial roles. There are people who would like to even make transition to product. That's not going to be an easy, but then I know she had done similar like that. So then you do a transition. So yeah, so there are a couple of trajectories. Even I haven't figured out what my trajectory would be yet. But then, so depending, or some people actually, you know what, after doing all this, I know, but then they would quit and then go to, let's say, some other places where they can live a nice vacation with work life types life. Like they would go to Thailand and then they would do that as well. So you would have different preferences down the line. But if you see the career trajectory, it's going to be more of engineering focused, managerial focused, product focused, or maybe at that point, most of them used to even go back to startups, right? Just like you guys did. So to have the experience of it. So yeah.
Right. All right. That's great. I mean, I think we've covered most of the questions. Anything that you would like to share with our audience today? Any words of advice or just thoughts? Anything you want to share with them?
So I would definitely say interview prep is hard, irrespective of whenever you do it, whatever stage of your career is in. So one thing is I would like to tell that to myself as well. So yeah, so it's not to give up, but then keep doing it, being perseverant. And also the other thing is when you want to go abroad, and if that's what you want, just don't be deterred by what others would tell you. Focus on it. Just believe it's possible and keep trying if that's what you want, and then you would get it. Just have a structured approach to it. Do not just directly go and be like, this is what I want to do. So if you guys go in that way, you'd be able to get it. And it's okay if you have a lot of rejections. I had tried for a couple of years as well, and even now I wouldn't know if this is going to be certain. And the last important thing is moving abroad comes with a lot of uncertainty. So that's why I think the process is also uncertain. So if we just start embracing that, then it should work out. As you said, it's just one feature at a time, one day at a time. So yeah.
All right. All right. Great. So thank you so much. I think we've taken up all the time that we had budgeted for the day. Definitely a lot of learnings from your own experience. And I hope this inspires a lot of people in our community to consider. Many times, people don't even think about it because they think it's a very difficult process. But then when they hear about people who have actually done it, and there's visibility about the process and the end result which you have achieved of actually going there, living there for a year, and the experiences that you have had, hopefully it motivates people, makes it more achievable in some sense. At least there's a path, and I hope the clarity that you have shared with everybody helps them plan their own and charter their own paths to working abroad. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Mridula. It was really wonderful. I did not even realize that it's been an hour and I have to stop right here. When is your next India trip?
Maybe the year end, let's see.
End of the year, potentially. Okay, we'll see. We'll try to do an offline event potentially when you're here. And then we can call everybody who's interested. It'll be a nice mixer so we can have more detailed conversations in person. But for now, thank you so much. All the best to you. keep succeeding in Meta and any other opportunities that you want to pursue in the future. We're all rooting for your success from here. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mridula. Thank you.
See you then. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So to all the audience here today, thank you so much for joining. I hope you found it interesting. I'll summarize a few key things. One is time. If you're planning to pick up opportunities internationally, you have to be prepared to set aside anywhere from 6 to 12 months. There's going to be a lot of trial and error and a lot of discovery. Focus the first 1 or 2. I mean, in Mridula's case, she had decided to go abroad 2 years before she actually did. Okay, so the 2 years before she went, that time period gave her the opportunity to research these opportunities, research the countries, talk to people on LinkedIn and figure out and say, okay, this is the place that I want to go, and this is the country where I think I want to, I want to be in my next career trajectory, right? From that point on, 6 to 8 months is what she said. I think it's a little optimistic. 6 to 12 months is probably more realistic, right? Finding the target companies, talking to people in those companies, understanding the interview processes, figuring out whether companies will sponsor for visas or not. That is a very important step. Applying to other companies will give you interview practice, but that if you succeed in those interviews, they might not result in offers. So that's, it might result in offers, but they won't be able to sponsor your green card or PR, which is permanent residency, or any other visa, for example. So no point doing that. Preparation, super important. Data structures and algorithms, I would say 300 to 500 questions, 40% easy, 40 to 50% intermediate, medium grade questions, but a lot of variety, a lot of depth, not the same type of questions, 200, 300 practice problems is not sufficient. You need variety, and you have to build your approach. I think the problem solving approach that you build, that Mridula also talked about, the 7-step approach that we follow in Cryo, is one example. But you can find your own, figure out your own approaches, so that given a new problem or given a new input to an existing problem, you should be able to modify your solutions. So memorizing is not going to get you very far. You have to understand and be able to solve the DSA problems within the limits of the interviews that you're going to take, right? So Cryo has a very rigorous DSA, curriculum that Mridula has also helped put together, right? So that's one thing if you want to consider us. Otherwise, there are many other very good courses in the market that you could use as well. So those are some options. System design. Early in your career, less than 1 year of experience, if you're applying, low-level system design is important. You should know your entity models, object-oriented programming, and it's not just theoretical. You should be able to translate that into actual code. Maybe not write a lot of code, but at least some skeleton code to show that it's not just theoretical knowledge. You can actually translate that into low-level system design code is important. But as you go towards the 1 to 3 years or 3+ years of experience, a lot of focus on high-level system design is going to be very important. So make sure you get prepped on those things as well. A plug from us here at Cryo is we've recently launched a Software Development Plus program, which focuses heavily on mid-career transitions, right? So if you are looking to become a senior software developer and your system design is weak, or you want some better practice, then we have a very, very rigorous curriculum focusing on low level as well as a lot of high level system design concepts. And you do it in a very hands-on way as well. So we have that. There are other courses in the market. It's not just us. So find one that works for you, right? But focus on system design. Following that, do not ignore the culture rounds, HR rounds. People think once the tech is done, it's just customary to do HR and manager rounds. It's not. It's a very, very important part of the interview process, because companies are very protective about their culture. And the people who come into the company should, enhance the culture, make it better, right? So are you that type of person who will come and make the culture better is something they're evaluating. So the questions they ask, there are no copy-paste answers. You can't use Chat GPT and succeed your way through a culture round. Definitely something that you have to work on, think about, write it yourself. It should come naturally to you, and you have to be open. You have to be genuine in the way you respond, because it's very easy to find someone who's just faking it. It's easy to spot them. Okay, so work on that. Get a lot of practice. If you're part of Cryo, we have a dedicated period of 6 to 8 weeks where we help you come up with answers to these questions on your own, but plenty of online resources where you can get similar help as well. Okay. After that, there is immigration and all those good things. But usually once you have an offer on hand, the companies will actually help a lot with the rest of the process. They have very robust people working on immigration, and they'll be able to help you through the rest of the process. They'll tell you have to do this, apply here. That kind of help, I think, is a little bit easier. It's longer and more involved and time consuming, but you get enough quality help from the company itself, because they've gone through the difficult part of interviewing and selecting you, and now they want to make sure they help you join the company as soon as possible. So that is usually taken care of. But even without that, there are a lot of local companies that can help with the process and hasten it for you as well. Okay, so these are some key things. Hopefully, this gives you a better way to think about how to transition to international opportunities. We were heavy on UK and London this time around because that's where Mridula is. In future sessions like these, we can focus on other countries, potentially Middle East or Australia. The United States itself is a very large and very, very different kind of market. So we can potentially bring people who have moved to these countries and hopefully give you an opportunity to ask questions and learn about those processes as well, right? But for now, thank you so much for joining us here. If you have any further questions, you can always write to our write to Cryo, and we'll be able to answer any specific questions for you as well, right? Was it useful? How many of you say if it's useful, give me a +1? Not so useful, -1. Yeah. Okay, you want more such sessions in the future? Any specific countries that you want us to focus on? Please let us know. We are here to help and help you with some of those, right? All right.